there's people are worried about blasphemy here, sort of stealth through the back door, or through the front door, whatever.
Very much through the front door. Can I just quickly, there are some people speaking about who have clearly sort of mugged up on Charlie Hebdo in the last couple of days and drawn from this tragedy whatever they like, but you really should know more if you're going to speak about this.
And I have shown more about than you about this topic.
You're going to need to know more before you smear dead
I'm not sparing, I'm not
but let me just, one thing you may not be aware of, one thing you may not be aware of, but it's worth throwing into the discussion, is that there are laws on the continent, particularly to do with anti-Semitism and particularly to do with the Holocaust. And let me just explain, because you may again not know this, but the historical reasons for that. France has historical reasons to be incredibly sensitive of anti-Semitism in particular, because within people's living memory, tens of thousands of Jews were put on trains and slaughtered. So we shouldn't be sensitive of Islamophobia? No, let me explain.
Well, we shouldn't be sensitive of it. There's a secret website called Google. If you go on there, you can look at other examples where France has been very hypocritical.
Let him explain.
There are very specific reasons. There are very specific reasons in France and Germany why some of those laws exist. But let me get back to the main point which you've been trying to divert us from. That's this. What is going on with this is an attempt not to make Islam be treated different, and not making Charlie Hebdo. It wasn't to treat Islam differently or Muhammad. It was to treat Islam exactly the same way that secular free people have the right to talk about every religion. And this gentleman and others are trying through the front door, some people through the front door with Kalashnikovs and others through the back door with this kind of weasel talk. What they do is try to make one religion free from being able to be criticised, and it must be stopped.
Well, people that are so insensitive are with you about their own religion. Taiwo.
So, wow. Did that get contentious real quick? And the problem that's happening here, as far as I'm concerned, is that Reza, the Muslim there, I think I would label him a Muslimist, he is arguing, every time he's arguing, he's giving that same point that there's relative degrees in freedom of speech. And so he doesn't want to be pinned down on one aspect. If freedom of speech is complete, he keeps basically going back to his premise. Well, you know what? There was a Charlie Hebdo writer. He wrote something. They didn't like him, so they sacked him. And then he has no idea of the history of Charlie Hebdo at all, thinking that it's a right-wing, organization, and doesn't know much about what it does in France. And then comes Douglas Murray, once again, loaded for bear with the facts, basically telling him, look, you have no idea what the freak you're talking about. Go learn something. He counters and says, well, go to Google it and you'll see that story of that writer being sacked. What does that have to do with anything in the conversation? It has absolutely nothing to do with it. He would have been better off basically answering the question and basically saying, you know what? Okay, I understand. There's racism, and then there's religion, and then there's degrees in terms of, how far we can go depending upon if we say something or something is spoken and it creates the intensity to incite or to invite violence or to do harm or to cause malice or to cause that kind of thing. He would have been better off to basically say, okay, there's a point. And then the laws that they have written in Western Europe about anti-Semitism laws, exactly what Douglas is talking about. Because of what happened to the Jews during World War II, especially what happened to many thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews within France that were rounded up with the in the people that collaborated with the Nazis and the Germans when France was taken over. So France has their own history, their dark history of what happened with Jews within France during World War II, pre and post. And so Douglas is basically putting it out there saying that is why there are some anti-Semitism laws that perhaps do curtail some type of speech because they are deemed to be anti-Semitic. And that's where this is, basically that's what it is. So once again, Douglas just comes right in, just bulldozes over this guy and basically says, hey, look, get an idea first of what you're talking about, then come back and talk about it. Anyways, let's continue because there's some other great points that are going to be made from other members of the audience. So let's go that right now.
Come in and say, as a rabbi, I don't like anti-Semitic cartoons, but I defend the right of people to make anti-Jewish or anti-women or other anti-remarks, because not only is it part of freedom of speech, but it also means that nothing is protected from scrutiny, and everything is open to criticism, whether it's rogue rabbis or paedophile priests
Holocaust
or
denial.
whatever. Pardon?
Holocaust
Well, that's a
denial.
historical difference. I think the real dividing line is you have a right to criticise, but you don't have a right to incite to violence. And when it goes from inspiring laughter to inspiring actual physical actions, that's the dividing line.
Dan Hodges.
Freedom of speech, all these different lines.
Dan Hodges, if I may,
rather-
we've not heard from Dan yet,
Yeah, no,
Raza, and I'm no doubt we'll hear from you again. Dan Hodges, columnist of The Telegraph. Are we cowed?
Well, to an extent, yes, we are being cowed, and I think this comes to the point of the argument. It is ridiculous to say that we all have an absolute right to say what we like whenever we like it at any time. We don't. We have constraints on free speech, even outside of the religious sphere, which is why we have defamation laws, we have libel laws, things such as that. There are various factors which mitigate how we exercise our free speech. There's no doubt about that. The debate we are having here today is about, should one of those factors be fear? Should one of those factors, it quite clearly is, should one of the factors that influences our free speech be the fear that if we exercise our free speech, someone is going to come in and murder us? Now, you made a point, and I think there is some legitimacy in the point. If you look at the Charlie Hebdo cartoons in the whole, there are a number of their cartoons that I personally would be uncomfortable with, and I've seen the allegations that some of them bordered on racism. Fine. Let's put that to one side, though, for the moment. Let us focus just specifically on a cartoon which focused on a negative, or what was perceived to be a negative image of the Prophet Muhammad. Do you think it is legitimate for a magazine like Charlie Hebdo or any other magazine to produce an image of that kind? Is it legitimate for them to do so?
If you're asking me to believe in freedom of speech more than other people are, then no, because they were prepared to ban someone when they wrote something anti-Semitic.
Yes, but
I'm saying, don't ask me to believe in... No, you're saying the right to offend, you should believe in that more than everyone else, because Charlie Hebdo smacks of hypocrisy in their own actions.
And I'm removing the hypocrisy. I was being very specific. You have rightly said that there was censorship of people for racism. I accept that people should not be allowed to express
racist towards Arabs as well.
Exactly, fine, and I'm accepting that. But I'm saying on this specific point, on a cartoon that was not generically racist, a cartoon that just showed a specific image of the Prophet Muhammad, do they have a right to publish that?
Anyone has a right to publish anything if, though, you're going to treat everyone equally. Muslims aren't being treated equally. When Charlie Hebdo, it's very clear. You can't separate the case from me, Dan. It's very clear.
Imagine us.
Yeah, so you're saying anyone has the right to say, if they did publish a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad that didn't have any racial...
We'll do the same about show black people in a bad light, show Jewish people in a bad light, but you won't, though, right? No, because freedom of speech has limits.
Can I ask a question I was going to ask? If they did depict an image of the Prophet Muhammad that didn't have any racial stereotyping whatsoever, and so therefore it takes away that point, are you then supportive of that? Would you say, yes, that's fine, that's a good and legitimate question to ask? The founder of a religion that's influenced billions of people across the world, it's legitimate to scrutinize any religion, including the Prophet Muhammad and Islam. It's legitimate.
Charlie Hebdo was not in the business of trying to get dialogue going. It was looking to offend.
Okay, divers in a second. Let's hear the audience.
Boy, with this guy Raza, you're trying to see if you can sort of, get a little bit behind him, okay, when he talks about the relative things of freedom of speech and that, there's different degrees to it. But then he's a one-trick pony. He keeps going back to the fact that, Charlie Hebdo was hypocritical because when somebody wrote something that was anti-Semitic, they sacked him. And Dan and the gentleman there from the Telegraph said, look, I'm willing to go ahead and give you that. Yes, they were hypocritical. But just answer me the following question. If a picture is drawn of any religious character, whether it's from Islam, whether it's from Judaism, whether it's from Christianity or Hinduism or Taoism or Buddhism, whatever it is, and there's no racial overtones at all, it's just a picture, a photograph. Someone just depicted and said, this is what I think this person looked like. Or this is what, or there was a picture of him that he saw from someplace else, let's say, whatever, and just drew a picture. all they're asking is that would you be saying that that is a First Amendment free speech right to do? And he sort of, in a way, says, yes, it is. But then he goes, but. They didn't do it. You know, they censored. They sacked a guy. They were hypocritical. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. You just can't get a solid answer from this guy who is working for the, I guess, the Muslim Center Affairs in the UK office. Anyways, let's continue with more.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Quick points, please.
The point is, I'm just wondering, I get this idea, we have a Muslim and we have race. Muslim is a faith system, and therefore it's not a race. So we cannot use the word racism when we're talking about a religion, because it is a choice. Yeah. Your race is not a choice, and anything that you can convert to is not a race. So therefore we're looking at two different issues, and we're conflating two different ideas together to try and make a point that doesn't make sense.
You know, folks, out of all the points that have been made so far in this video, of all the points, Douglas Murray's, Majid Nawaz, the Raza, the gentleman, the person from the Telegraph, all the people so far, this lady's insight and basically pointing out that you're conflating two ideas, the race of a people versus the religion of a people. Race is not a choice, but religion is a choice. And she said anything that you can convert to cannot be race. Very, very profound. I've heard that talked about before and made that argument similarly as well, that you can pick your religion, but you can't pick your race. That's what you were born with, just like you can't pick the color of your skin. Right? You can't pick any of that. You can't pick that you were a boy or a girl. You can't pick how tall you are. You can't pick how big you are. You can't pick how fat or skinny, handsome, ugly. You can't pick any of those things. It is who you are. You can't, right? But you can choose your religion. You might have grown up as something, and you might decide to stay with it because of, for whatever reason, family, or you feel that's what your faith is. But you could choose it, or not to choose it, or somebody else could decide to choose it or not to choose it. So it was a very, very profound statement by that lady, bringing this into play. Let's hear some more from other audience members as well.
Right there at the back. Hello.
I think the issue involved here is hypocrisy. Why? We tend to give the impression that everything we do, we can do it freely. If you are cooking, for example, there is a limited amount of salt you have to eat. You are driving on the road, there is a speed limit. Anything you have to do, there must be a limit. So freedom of speech cannot be without a limit. The issue here is... Would
you find, sir, these cartoons, a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, offensive?
I find them offensive, but I will not react the same way these people reacted.
No, of course,
however,
of course. Let me ask you another question, because the Guardian cartoonist Martin Rowson, he was saying on Channel 4 News that he did want to do a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad with a T-shirt on, Prophet Muhammad T-shirt, saying, "Not in my name," but he didn't feel he was able to do that. If he had done that, would you have found that offensive?
I have said it, and I'm repeating it here as a Muslim, that you can offend. You have the choice to retaliate or to forgive.
Well,
that is what Islam
Would you have
preaches.
found that offensive?
Even if I find it offensive, I'm not going to react by killing these people.
That.
Right, that is the point.
I understand.
However,
let me bring it back. It's Taiwo from Discuss Jesus. Yeah. You would be unhappy about derogatory cartoons about Jesus Christ, wouldn't you? Told me earlier on.
I mean, I do subscribe to the fact that everyone's got a view, everyone's got a right to their own opinion. But I kind of question the wisdom in all of this. and the purpose in all of this. And what's interesting about the magazine is...
Well, the purpose of being so provocative.
Yeah, the purpose, yeah. What's the purpose? I mean, surely the aim should be that, you know, it can help the society to be progressive.
Harmonious, yeah.
Harmonious as well. And I think, if anything, mockery in all forms is non-progressive. It's poison. And I think what we have here is almost a self-combustion of the very fanaticism or the fundamentalism.
It's a joke. It's a laugh. It's freedom of
targeting.
speech. It's a bit of mockery. If you take out mockery.
Harmonious as well. And I think, if anything, mockery in all forms is non-progressive. It's poison. And I think what we have here is almost a self-combustion of the very fanaticism or the fundamentalism.
It's a joke. It's a laugh. It's freedom of
targeting.
speech. It's a bit of mockery. If you take out mockery, you take away comedy.
It's also a weapon
Yeah, I mean,
for
this
truth.
is
Do you want to remain weapon for truth?
It's a weapon for truth, and that's sometimes why people don't like being lampooned, because it's actually too close to comfort, and it exposes ills that need to actually come out and...
Kate Smurthwaite. Sorry, Rose. Kate's been trying to come in.
I think there's quite an important point that seems to be sort of hinted at and not quite explicitly made, which is there's actually quite a big difference between lampooning Muhammad and the stories and ideas and ideals behind Islam as a sort of structure of thought and of belief. And there's a difference between that and lampooning individual, ordinary people who are Muslim. That's quite different. In actual fact, there are 32 countries around the world where it is illegal to stop being a Muslim. So to assume that anybody who fits that label Muslim believes every word that is, you know, spoken by radical Islamists is, of course, completely wrong. And in fact, the first victims of extreme radical Islam are ordinary Muslims. And for their benefit, as much as everybody else's, we must continue to shred apart the ideas behind it and challenge it for their benefit as well as everybody else's.
This young lady makes a very, very important point, and basically saying that, you know what, the individual people that you're making fun of, individual Muslims or whatever that people may be making fun of, versus the characters or the people within the Holy Scriptures, the prophet in this case, or other, members of the Muslim faith that are talked about or depicted, within the Scriptures or in the Hadiths or in the other traditions. She's basically saying that in many instances, it is those Muslims that sometimes are being made fun of, but they're moderate Muslims, they're pragmatic Muslims, and they're the reformers. They're trying to do something or whatever. But if they're being made fun of, and that's occurring, how can they expect to fight, or how can they expect to try to take on the radicalists, the fundamentalists, the Islamists, the Muslimists within the Islamic faith? How do you expect them to do anything if they're also being made fun of, if they're also, being attacked? So she makes a very, very good point there. And people need to realize, too, that there are the terrorist activities that have occurred in Western democracies. Those are absolutely horrific. And any loss of life, due to that, it just completely, it should never have happened, beyond the pale. But the number of Muslim on Muslim violence, Muslim terrorism against other Muslims, against other sects, just because, like a group of Muslims maybe they're fanatical, but there's a group that's liberal, and the fanatical group doesn't like it, so they go and attack them. In the country, outside the country, other places, that's what's happening. You've got, I think, 50 or 60 Muslim countries, and majority countries out there, and the violence that is perpetrated, a Muslim on Muslim, is so much greater than that which is perpetrated Muslim versus non-Muslim. It doesn't mean that they're both bad, but she makes a point where if we are not standing up for those Muslims on the front lines that are moderate, pragmatic, that are trying to change things, or basically preaching against fundamentalism, against radicalism, against Islamism, against being a Muslimist, that should be, looked at as well. Anyways, let's continue.
No question, just throwing it to you.
For me, the example I refer to, again, it's a website called Google. If you go on that, you can find some examples of how Charlie Hebdo in the past has been hypocritical. No, let me finish my point, Majid. Let me finish the point without being sarcastic about it. And yeah, I'm allowed to be here. But in Charlie Hebdo, Nicolas Sarkozy, it was a case when they were hinting that he was converting to Judaism for financial gain, and that was considered to be anti-Semitic. Now you're saying that we should be allowed to push the boundaries. There's some boundaries saying we can't be pushed, that shouldn't be pushed. That will
It's a choice to buy it, isn't it? Isn't it a choice to buy it?
That's not the question. We're not
Isn't
saying
it a choice to read
the
it?
right to buy something that offends you or doesn't offend. That's not the question that we're talking about.
It's disingenuous. We've already established the point that Muslims are not a race, and we've also already established the point, as Kate made so well, that there's a big difference between scrutinizing a religion and its founder and picking on individual Muslims. No one here wants to pick on people. What we're talking about is the importance of scrutinizing ideas. Why is that so important? The reason it's so important is it happened to me last year. It happens to millions of Muslims across the world. Minorities within minority communities. There are feminist Muslims, there are gay Muslims, there are ex-Muslims, there are liberal Muslims, there are dissenting voices upon whom the charge of blasphemy is used, not just to silence them, but to actually kill them. This week, ISIL, on the streets of Iraq, publicly executed a magician for sorcery. The poor chap was a street musician attempting to make a quick buck because there's nowhere to find a job because ISIL are doing such a terrible job at running that place. And they executed him for sorcery. People use this excuse of Islamophobia, and it is an excuse. It's not Islamophobic to scrutinize a religion, just as it's not Christianophobic to scrutinize Christianity. But they want to silence minority voices. And it's to resist the charge of reform.
There we must.
So leave it there to Majeed Nawaz to wrap this up in a nice little bow, tie it up, and basically say that, they're in terms of, attacking those Muslims and making fun of individual Muslims versus attacking, I guess, saying things about the religious faith. Those two have to be weighed. And he basically goes on to also say that this is what the blasphemy laws, are being utilized to silence those Muslims that want to be reformers, those Muslims that are moderate, pragmatic, that basically are saying that, we don't want the radicalization, the fundamentalism, the Islamism. We don't want that. But these blasphemy laws are being utilized against these Muslims to cause violence against them, to put them in jail, to lock them away. In many instances, the death sentence is put against them, as he talked about with that street magician who was basically put to death because he was committing sorcery and witchcraft. Obviously, to control the population, to say, hey, look, if this can happen to this guy, you guys better toe the line and not step out of the boundaries. Don't try to be a reformer. Don't try to be pragmatic. Don't try to be liberal. No. Stay in your lane. Don't go out of your lane. That's what they do with fear tactics, just like the gentleman from the Telegraph, Dan, was saying, is this freedom of speech is one of the things that's stopping it, the fear, because harm could come to you if you decide to go in that route. Anyways, folks, we appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasser Sheikh Show. I've been your host, Dr. Nasser. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel if you found our content to be, something that you like to see. Follow, like, share. You know what to do. Check out our video links above and below. I'll leave you with my final thought always, which is, when you're right, you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.